Hello everybody, today we are going to learn about displaying bitmap pictures in Android and doing that the correct way so that you don't get out of memory errors because the thing about the phones is that they don't have as much memory as computers do, and so it becomes really easy if you're loading big pictures for the phone to run out of memory, and then you will get an exception. Your program will crash and users will be really mad. So today we're going to learn how to load some bitmaps correctly using the help of a library that we find on GitHub. And in order to demonstrate this, we're going to look at this example program that I've made here, QRMaker. If you want the source code to this program, you can always find it github.com/foamyguy/QRMaker. You can come and find this, get the code that we're using today, download it, do whatever you want with it. This example project we're going to do is really simple. It's going to take text from the clipboard and it's going to download a QR code and show that QR code on the screen so you could scan it and it will read the text that was on the clipboard for you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about why we need to pay special attention when we're loading bitmaps on Android. So on the developer's website here, developer.android.com/training, this is a great resource. Definitely should go there and check out some of the different topics that are covered on that site. It will teach you best practices of how to do lots of different stuff with Android. Definitely should check that out at some point. This one we're going to be dealing with today, displaying bitmaps efficiently. If you want to find this page, you could probably search for that. We'll pull it up. And it talks about learn how to use common techniques to process and load bitmaps objects in a way that keeps your user interface components responsive and avoids exceeding your application's memory limit. So that's what I was talking about earlier with out-of-memory exceptions. And you can see here, if we go to Stack Overflow, there's lots and lots of different questions about Android, strange out-of-memory errors and out-of-memory with bitmaps and all this kind of stuff. These people who got these errors, they didn't take some of this stuff into consideration, and that's why they got the errors they got. So this page here is the official developer document that tells you all of the nitty-gritty details about how you load bitmaps efficiently and why you need to do so, and here's kind of all the steps involved with that. It's broken out into 5 parts here. We got loading large bitmaps efficiently, processing bitmaps off the UI thread, caching bitmaps, managing memory, and displaying bitmaps in your UI. So these are the 5 things that kind of make up everything encompassed within these 3 words here, displaying bitmaps efficiently. So I definitely recommend, if you want to dig a little bit deeper on this topic, you can come to this site here and read more about these things and how to do them. But what we're going to learn specifically today, we're actually going to use a library that does a lot of this work for us. This library is on GitHub. It's free to use. This guy here, Nostra13, he created this for us to use. That's very awesome. I'd like to thank him for doing that. This makes a lot of our lives a lot easier, the fact that he made this and shared it with us. And this is going to be the library we're going to use today. It's called Android Universal Image Loader. And its little short description here: powerful and flexible instrument for asynchronous image loading, caching, and displaying, which is exactly what we're looking for. It's going to cover all of the stuff that this page here talks about, and it's going to give it to us in a nice little library package we can just add and use much like a regular image view without having to worry about everything that goes into doing this correctly. So definitely check out this page here. You can learn more information about this specific project. The features we got here, downloads are good, documentation always very nice. So what you want to do is hit this download this repository as a zip file. Go ahead and download that, or you can check it out with Git if you know how to use Git. You already have that set up. You could check it out that way. Here's the URL for that, obviously. But for now, we're just going to use download with zip. Got this file downloaded over here. Here's everything that is going to be in the downloaded folder once you get it. So you can see we got downloads, library, sample. Sample is really good. You can build this application here and install it on your phone to see the sample project for this library, or if you don't want to go through the build process, you can actually look inside downloads and you'll see he's got an APK file here. You can install this to your phone and see the sample project that he put together for this. But what we need most out of here is the jar file. So we got a universal image loader 1.8.2 jar file. That's the one we're going to be using today. So you'll want to get this downloaded, get the folder open so that you got good access to this jar file here when we need it in a minute. So the next thing we're going to look at, because this example deals with QR codes, where are we going to get these QR codes from? Well, it turns out that Google has an API here, Infographics API. You'll see that it's deprecated. That means they're not going to be supporting this for too much longer. I think there's a date in there somewhere that says how long they will support it. It's still for a few years, but in the long term, this thing's not going to be here. So they're telling you, don't rely on it for too long because it's going to go away. But for now, this will do because we just need an example of where we can download an image from. If you do want to learn more about QR codes and how this API works, I definitely recommend checking out this page here, and that will show you kind of all of the different variables that you're allowed to pass and all the different things about QR codes when you download them from this API. So this is just so you know this API exists. This is where we're going to be downloading the images from to show onto the screen. So now let's dig into the actual source code we're using here and see what we got. We got this project QRMaker over here. This is the same one from GitHub. I recommend to you to download that if you want to take a look at this source code or reuse it. So there's a few things that make up this project. These three most important files here, we got QRActivity.java. This is going to be the activity where we're going to do all of our work in. Got the manifest file, obviously, and then we got a layout file here that's going to hold all of this stuff for us so we can show it on the screen. So let's start with the layout file. We see we got text view. We're going to put whatever text we get from the clipboard into this text view just so the user can see it on a screen there to make sure he copied the right thing. Progress bar, we're going to use this. It's kind of deceptive the way it says progress bar. It's actually the little spinny thing that goes on the screen. It's going to basically just indicate to the user we're doing some work in the background. Just hang on for a second. It gives them something to stare at because people like to stare at moving things. And then we got regular old image view here. Name that one QR image. We'll give it wrap contents and we'll put it in the center. You'll notice we're using a relative layout here for our parent, but obviously this concept will apply to whatever you're using. In the manifest, we got some important things to note here. You need the uses permission with internet because we're going to be downloading these pictures from the internet. And then another thing you need, which I don't have here, if you want the image loader to cache onto the SD card, you will need to add the right SD card permission in here as well. But for this project, it's pretty straightforward. We're not going to do any of that because we're just downloading one image, so we need just the internet. Another thing to note here, we got minimum SDK is set to 4. That's a long time ago. That will cover almost all the devices that are out there. And the reason we chose 4 here is because I wanted to support the most number of devices possible, and it's also to demonstrate that this universal image loader library works. Even before that, it works Android 1.5, which is 3. So we're going to support only 4+, but this library does support, if for some reason you're working all the way back on 1.5, it will support it for you too. So that we got in there, and we got to have obviously activity with main launcher so we can launch our thing. And that's about all of the fun stuff that we need inside here for today. The other thing we got here is QRActivity. This one's very important. This is going to be where we do all the work of downloading and pulling text out of the clipboard and showing the QR code to the user. So first, let's take a step backwards. Let's talk about, we got this jar file here, and we need to get this into our project. So to do that, from inside of Eclipse, we want to add this libs folder here. This is going to be a folder inside of our project where we store different libraries that we're using, so we call it libs so we know what it means, and we're going to put this universal image loader jar file into there. Now, you may not, depending on your version of Eclipse, you may not already have this libs folder. If you need to make that, you can just right click on your project name here, and we go to new and folder, and you can type libs down here and hit finish. That will create that folder for you. Some of the newer versions of Eclipse, they make this for you and they automatically put this support jar in here. We're not going to use this for this particular project, but Eclipse did generate it for us. That was nice of it. And in doing so, it gave us this folder, so we didn't have to create it. That's where we want to paste. The jar file, though, is inside this libs folder. That's only half the process. The next thing we have to do, right-click on our project here. We will go to Properties and Java Build Path, and then we want to be on Libraries tab. And then what we want to do is we want to get this jar file that we just downloaded into here. What we're going to do that is click the Add External Jars button. We'll navigate to the libs folder where we just pasted this jar file, and we'll select it and do open. I already done that here, so I'm going to do cancel. But that's after all of that. If everything goes well, it should show up in this list here as universal image loader.jar in whatever version you're using. So after that, we hit OK. We added our library. And that's important because that allows us to use these two imports here, which we need in order to use this library. So if you get an error on these lines, that means that you did not set up the project correctly, and what you need to do is go in and add the external jar file so that these imports work. You'll also notice we got Clipboard Manager up here with a line through it. That is telling us that Clipboard Manager is deprecated. Android Text Clipboard Manager is deprecated, and the reason for that is they added a new one, Android Content Clipboard Manager, but they didn't add that until API level 11, and since we want to support API level 4, we're going to stick with this older and now deprecated one of Android Text Clipboard Manager, but we do want to be cognizant of the fact that that is now deprecated, and this is the preferred method to use for Clipboard Manager. So inside of our activity here, we got some basic things. We want to get these imports from our library, and we've got image loader. That's going to be the library image loader object, and that is an object, obviously, as its name states. It makes it easy for us to load images. We'll call that image loader. We got image view QRImage. That's going to be from our layout back here, the image view that we're going to put the QR into. We got a string, copied string. That's going to be what we get out of the clipboard. And we got a text view, QR text. That's also from our layout back here. And that's going to be the text that we put the clipboard text into while we're showing the QR code. The last thing we got here, Clipboard Manager, Clipboard, and then we got a couple URLs that we're going to use. Base QR URL. This is the URL to the Google Charts server, but it doesn't have any text put in for the parameter that indicates what the QR code is going to encode. So it's an important kind of concept to understand how this works. So because they have this API for us, we could take this URL here, we come to our browser, we open up a new tab, paste that in there and put in some text after it, and it will return to us a PNG image. That's the only thing it returns, is just a PNG image. Since we're in Chrome browser here, any modern browser is just going to display that PNG for us, but what we're going to be doing inside this app is actually downloading that QR so we can show it to the user. So that's the base URL we're using, and you could go through and change some of these parameters if you want. If you want to know what they do, you got to check out this Google Charts page document back there that I showed you in the browser. That's back here. Just pop it on there for a quick second. But we're going to use these ones that we got filled in here. Then we got string full URL. This is going to be the base URL plus our text that we get from the clipboard. So we make a separate string for that. And that's all we got to declare. So now we're going to jump down into onCreate. Got set content view to our layout so that we can show our screen. These next 3 lines here, these are important for the library we're using. We got image loader configuration config equals new image loader configuration dot builder dot this is a context, and then dot build on that. So that's going to give us a image loader configuration object, which is what we use obviously to configure the image loader that's coming from our library. We're not going to put any special settings on it in this example, but there are a bunch of different settings you can use to kind of control how this thing works, and if you want to learn about those, you got to check it out on the GitHub page. It explains down here a little bit exactly what all of these settings do and why you would use them and all that kind of fun stuff. For now, we're going to leave it with default. The next thing we got, image loader is equal to image loader.getInstance. That's what they have here. Instead of a constructor, we got getInstance method, and it's static, so we're going to call that to get a reference to the image loader. And then we call image loader.init, and we pass it the config file that we made right here, or config object. So then that's all we need to use this library. This is only 3 lines of code here, and it makes it a lot easier than doing all of the stuff that's required if you follow this page here. You'll end up with lots more than 3 lines, but it's still good to learn that stuff if you need to at some point. After that, we got our image view. We're going to find view by ID, and our text view, same thing. And then we get clipboard equals, we're going to cast as clipboard manager because this get system service method returns to us an object. We got to cast it in order for it to be useful. And we say context.clipboard service because that is the service that we want. See the strikeout here means because we're using this deprecated version. So if you want to use this newer import Android content clipboard manager, then these things won't have strikeouts through them because that's the newer one. It's not deprecated. So we got clip text equals clipboard.getText. This is basically saying we want to get the text from whatever has been copied previously on the device, and we're going to store it inside clip text. Here is the method if you want to use the new clipboard manager that's not deprecated. You got a couple extra steps, but it's essentially kind of the same thing in this application, just that's the preferred way to do it now. So now we got a if statement, so we're going to say if the text we got from the clipboard is not null and if its length is greater than 0. So basically we're asking, was there anything in the clipboard? If not, we're going to show up a alert dialog that lets the user know, hey, you didn't copy any text, go back, get some, and then come back here if you want to make a QR code out of it. So if we did have text, this is where we're going to put the code that's actually going to get the QR code for us. So we got to have it in a try-catch block here because we're using URL encoder, and we got an exception that gets thrown by that potentially. So we got try-catch to catch that for us. So what we're going to do is qrtext.setText clip text, which is what we got, remember, from the clipboard up here. That's whatever's been copied. We're going to set that into our text view. Then we say copied string, that's a string we declared up here. We're going to set that equal to cliptext.toString, and then we are going to URL encode that copied string just in case the user had some things that aren't allowed in URLs, because obviously we're sending this text that we get from the clipboard back to that Google API, and it's going to accept only URL encoded text. Otherwise you're going to get errors because if it's got spaces in it or stuff like that. So we use the URL encoder here. We get full URL plus equals what we get back from the encoder. So basically we're saying we want to take this base URL, and because that's what we set it, full URL back here equals base URL, we're going to add to that the text that we get back from the URL encoder, which is encoding what we got out of the clipboard. And then the only method here we have to call to display our image is imageLoader.displayImage, and we pass it 2 parameters. One of them is the URL where we want to download from, and the other one is the image view that we want to put the downloaded image into. So that's all it is. It takes 1 line here, and that will take care of all of these best practices that will download the image for us and make sure that we try not to get that out of memory exception. So that's what we do if we got text. If we didn't, then we're going to build a alert dialog here, and we're going to let the user know that there was no text, and once they click OK, we're just going to finish so that they can go and copy some text. And that is it for this whole QR activity. So now let's check out how it works. We'll pull up the emulator here, and we'll go ahead and run this. QRMaker, so here is our dialog. It's telling us there was no data in the clipboard, go copying something and come back. So we will click OK. We'll open up the browser, let's say, type in google.com up here, and then we can long press and copy all. And now we will go back to home. We'll open up this QRMaker again. So now this time you see we had the loading progress indicator in there for a second while we were downloading this picture, and we got google.com in our text view, and we downloaded this image and shown it successfully. So if you scan this, it should take you to google.com. So that is how this application works, and this code here is all you need to do it. And the reason it was so easy is because this universal image loader library. So definitely you want to go and get this library, check it out, use it or something like it when you're downloading and showing images. It's also good if you're showing images from the SD card or even assets, all kinds of places. This library is very good for helping you do that and avoiding these nasty out-of-memory errors. This is not the only library, there are others out there, but I think this is a really easy one to use, and it covers a lot of this stuff that is taught in these training courses here on how to use bitmaps without actually having to necessarily understanding how all of this stuff works. It's good to understand that you need to do all these things in order to display your bitmaps and avoid some of the issues. But it's nice that this guy has made a library here that wraps it up into very simple, only one method call here. And again, that is down this way. Image loader.display image takes care of all that stuff on that page for us. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and definitely check in later. We will have some more of these nice tutorials up here. Thanks for watching.